A routine traffic stop in the quiet town of Elmridge, Virginia, was about to uncover a secret buried for over half a century. Officer Daniel Moore, a by-the-book patrolman who had worked the same route for the last 8 years, had seen just about everything Elmridge had to offer: speeding teenagers, expired tags, the occasional DUI. Nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to stumble into. It was just after 10 a.m. on a calm Tuesday morning. The dogwoods were in bloom, and the usual slow rhythm of the town played out like any other day. Daniel sat in his cruiser, sipping lukewarm coffee and half listening to the dispatch radio when he saw it. A dusty, mint-condition Buick Skylark rolling lazily through a stop sign at Maple and 3rd. He flipped on his lights, more out of habit than concern, and pulled the car over to the side of the road. Behind the wheel was an elderly woman, neatly dressed in a powder blue blouse with pearl buttons and a soft grey hat that seemed as much a part of her as the deep lines etched into her face. Her eyes were sharp, clear, and filled with something Daniel couldn't quite name, a kind of quiet resolve that unsettled him more than the infraction itself. He approached the vehicle with standard protocol. "License and registration, please," he said, as he had 1,000 times before. The woman offered a small smile and reached into the glove compartment without hesitation. She handed him the documents, and Daniel took them without much thought, until he looked down at the name printed on the license: Rosa M. Langston. Daniel felt a sudden, inexplicable chill. The name rang a bell, but not from anywhere recent. As he studied the date of birth, 1938, a memory surfaced, half-formed, from an old case study they'd once covered at the academy. Rosa Langston had been presumed dead since 1972, vanished without a trace during an investigation into a Cold War-era intelligence leak. Her disappearance had become something of a mystery, part ghost story, part government cover-up. Daniel excused himself calmly and walked back to his cruiser. He tapped into the department's database and entered her name. The screen flickered, then loaded a file so heavily redacted it was barely legible. But the heading was clear: Rosa M. Langston. Status: deceased. Classification: confidential. His heart started to race. A few seconds later, his radio crackled to life. Unit 14, Officer Moore. Return to your vehicle. Do not detain the driver. Repeat, do not detain. Daniel stared at the radio, confused. Dispatch never interfered with routine stops. Something was wrong. He grabbed his personal phone and dialed the number of Captain Lionel Greaves. "Sir, I need you at my location immediately," he said. "There's something off." Within minutes, a black unmarked SUV pulled up, and out stepped Greaves, his normally composed expression strained with something between disbelief and reverence. He didn't say a word to Daniel. Instead, he walked straight up to Rosa's window and gave a small, solemn nod. "Welcome back, ma'am," he said quietly. Daniel stood in stunned silence, watching as Rosa returned the nod. Her smile now tinged with something heavier, relief, perhaps, or resignation. "I suppose the world's finally caught up to me," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. Greaves turned to Daniel. "She needs to be taken to a secure location. You ride with me. Leave her car here. We'll have it picked up." As the three of them drove away from the scene, Daniel couldn't stop glancing in the rearview mirror at Rosa. Finally, he couldn't hold it in any longer. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, who are you?" Rosa looked at him for a long time. "I was a cryptographer," she began. "Worked with the Office of Strategic Analysis back in the late 50s and 60s. My job was to intercept and decode sensitive transmissions. We were hunting for leaks, traitors selling our secrets to foreign interests." She paused, folding her hands in her lap, "and we found one, a high-ranking officer embedded deep in our own intelligence infrastructure. I gathered enough evidence to bring it forward. But the moment I did, things changed. My apartment was ransacked. I started receiving threats. One of my colleagues, the only one I trusted, told me I had a target on my back." Daniel listened, captivated. Rosa spoke with the clarity of someone who had replayed these moments 1,000 times in her mind. "So we made a plan," she continued. "Faked a car crash on a bridge near Richmond. A few forged documents, some creative reporting, and I was officially dead. From there, I vanished. Moved around for years, never stayed in one place more than a few months. The people who tried to silence me were powerful. They had connections. Even now, I don't know how many of them are still alive. But I do know this: they never stopped looking. Daniel tried to process it all. It sounded like something out of a spy novel, not something you heard during a routine traffic stop in Elmridge. "Why come back now?" he asked. "Because I believe the truth is finally safer than the silence," Rosa said. "I've lived with this burden for over 50 years. I have names, files, evidence. I couldn't release it until I was sure it wouldn't be buried again, until someone was finally willing to listen." When they reached the secured facility on the outskirts of town, a place Daniel hadn't even known existed, Greaves escorted Rosa inside personally. The reinforced gate hissed shut behind her like a final curtain dropping on a decades-long performance. Daniel waited outside, staring at the nondescript building, the weight of what had happened sinking in like a slow tide pulling at his thoughts. Later that day, Greaves pulled him aside. "I know you've got questions. I can't answer all of them, but I will say this. Rosa Langston is a patriot. She sacrificed everything to protect this country. What you stumbled into today was the tip of an iceberg most people will never see." Daniel nodded slowly. "It just doesn't feel real." Greaves offered a rare smile. "Most truth doesn't, but it matters just the same." In the days that followed, Rosa's story began to unfold in classified briefings, encrypted emails, and whispered conversations behind locked doors. She provided decryption keys, handwritten notes, and tapes hidden for decades in safe houses across the country. Evidence so meticulously preserved, it stunned even the most seasoned analysts. Every detail she offered was a puzzle piece long thought lost, and with each revelation, the full scope of what had been hidden came into focus. The mole she had once identified had long since passed, but the network he supported had left a paper trail, a delicate thread that Rosa now helped unravel with a mind as sharp as ever and a resolve carved from years of silence. Names once considered ghosts returned to the pages of reports, and operations thought buried were re-examined under new light. Her return triggered investigations, resignations, and quiet reckonings in places where silence had once been gospel. Senior officials suddenly remembered things they'd long claimed to forget. Files previously marked as missing were mysteriously found. The past clawed its way into the present, and truth, long buried, began to rise. Daniel went back to his routine patrols, but nothing about them felt routine anymore. Every time he stopped a car, he wondered what story the driver might be hiding. What secrets rode in the silence between heartbeats? What truths were folded into glove compartments, scrawled on receipts, or etched in the eyes of strangers? He thought about Rosa often. Her poise, her courage, the unbearable weight she had carried for half a century. She had walked through decades of shadow so others could remain safe in the light. And now, after all that time, she had stepped forward, not just to clear her name, but to let the truth breathe again. It was strange how something so monumental had begun with something so small. A stop sign, a Buick, a question asked with no agenda. And yet, that tiny moment had been enough to crack open the dam of silence and let history spill out. Some secrets fade with time, others wait, buried beneath layers of lies, half-truths, and silence, until someone dares to lift the veil. And Rosa Langston had lifted it. The last anyone saw of her, she was standing at the edge of a briefing room, her hands resting on a folder thick with the past, her eyes steady. There were rumors she'd be relocated, given a new identity, again. But Daniel suspected that after all she'd lived through, Rosa wasn't looking to disappear anymore. She had already vanished once. Now she was ready to be seen. And somewhere, deep in a government archive, the truth she preserved would be stamped, catalogued, and finally recognized. History might try to forget her, but now it never could. She had outlasted them all, the doubters, the deceivers, the architects of silence. She had kept the truth alive in the dark, nurturing it like a flame, waiting for the day it could burn freely. And now that day had come. Rosa Langston had not just returned, she had made history look her in the eye. And history blinked. If you made it this far, comment "The truth never fades" below, and stay tuned. because the next story might already be passing you by, hiding behind a turn signal, flickering in a stranger's eyes, whispering through the silence between words. The truth is still out there, waiting, watching. And sometimes it just needs someone willing to ask one more question, even if it changes everything, even if it rewrites the past, even if it costs everything. Because the truth doesn't just set us free, it demands to be found.